Yeah, I agree. My birthday. Did this around? Yeah, actually, I made do I did the meals for this schedule. It was very professional. Yeah. So, that is, yeah.
Even Jesus does seem like the signs for the store, they're all like, you know. If I sit down. They had a mark. Our guy take those tickets.
Like, except for the race.
Does it?
That's why I should have. I've gotten rid of the Hawaiian button, it takes a Hawaiian button, yeah, like. The theater is in my school.
I'm not. So I just.
All right, let's get started, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello, delighted to have you with us. Thank you for being with us as we continue on in our series called Beyond the Backpacks and our focus on public education and how we might be faithful in our public witness, in our faith, in support of public education. Just a reminder to y'all that we do record our time together, and it would be available on our channel on YouTube. Normally, I'm able to stream live, but for some reason, I'm having an issue, so I am recording, and I'll have it posted on our YouTube channel later. But all of the other videos are stored there, so if you want, you can go back and look at the previous lessons that we've already covered. Let's do some quick introductions, and I'm going to start with Carla, and we'll work our way over, and then down to Diane, and we'll work our way over to Mary, Karen, and then over to Michelle, and then we'll go and then we'll get the folks who are on the Zoom. And your question for today is your name and what field trip do you remember? Name the field trip, not the commentary. Okay, so like a field trip I remember is going to the Discovery Center, the day out with the Science Museum, basically what it was. Okay, so Carla.
Carly Young, the Alamo.
Okay.
Harold Coleman, Gettysburg Battlefield.
Eileen Coleman, the Washington Zoo. Susan McBrayer, the Wonder Bread Factory.
Alan Beal, the Bavarian Alps.
Wow. He wins.
Yeah.
Diane Rogers, this comes from my time of teaching. I really don't remember field trip from my elementary age, but going to McKinney Falls State Park, and we did like a ropes course, and they had time, and the teachers got to zip line.
All right.
And that is one of those things I'm so glad I did. It was just an amazing experience.
Good. Daryl.
Carol Lowe, second grade, the symphony. I learned that classical music is not my thing.
John Hoffner, the Science Museum in New York in junior high school.
Okay.
Sarah Hansen, trip to United Nations. Sophomore in high school.
That is a field
Made
trip.
an impression.
Joe Schultz, and I'm gonna say the modeling clay factory, because we got to take home some modeling clay.
Okay.
Kent Whiteside, Dallas Symphony, where I discovered that symphony, that classical music was my thing.
Me too, the Dallas Symphony, and I got affirmed that it is my thing. And if you ever want to hear me sing Going to the Symphony song, I'll be glad to do that.
I think we can get that on recording. Mary.
Mary Zimmerman, and this is from North Carolina, but my favorite field trip was the state fair.
Oh, yeah.
Karen McElhaney, the Chicago Museum of Science and Industry.
Joan Hetherington, my senior band trip to the Midwest National Band and Orchestra Clinic.
Helen Siegel, my senior band trip to the Met.
Missing Roma, I don't know whether you, this was in Africa to wildlife.
Wildlife Park.
Mhm.
Okay, good.
Kathy Roberts, we didn't do too many field trips. The only one I remember is the Archway Cookie Factory in East Texas.
Yeah.
Steve Sains and Empire State Building.
Michelle Cooper, Huntsville, Alabama Space Center.
Vikki Goodwin, actually with my daughter, her field trip was to New York for the Macy's Day Parade.
What was the name of the wildlife park you went to? You don't remember? That's okay. That's okay. Good. Hey, Tom.
Hi.
Hey, quick question. Can you name a field trip that you remember that you went on as a kid?
Well, I grew up with Austin Elementary School, so we went to Buttercrust Bakery, Superior Dairies. But the best one of all was the original, which is still there, Lamb's Candies.
I love it.
But I'm not old or anything.
You just mentioned a whole bunch of things I don't know anything about, so I'll need to correct that.
Don't forget them.
Yes, thank you. Kitty, field trip. You're muted, Kitty.
When I was in Campfire Girls, we took a helicopter ride over the Paladura Canyon.
That's good. All right, Nancy.
Senior high school international relations class, long day trip to the United Nations.
Right, very cool. Very nice, very nice. All right, let's begin with prayer. Let's pray. Holy God, we gather seeking truth and understanding. Quiet our distractions, soften our assumptions, and prepare us to hear what you would have us know. Be with us now. Amen. A reminder that there in the handout is our 7-point class covenant, that we're here to be open and to listen and to be shaped and crafted, even if we don't want to be. That we strive to have an openness to how God may be at work in our lives. Over the past few weeks, we have been learning to slow down and to look carefully at what is happening around public education. Last week, we looked at how power actually gets organized and how ideas move through networks and why it feels chaotic on the surface. What feels chaotic on the surface is often very intentional underneath. Last week, I had mentioned to you and highlighted the work of the State Board of Education, and that the reading lists that were being proposed that were predominantly white, male-centered, Christian-centered had been postponed. We also have talked about Senate Bill 10, which was passed the last Texas legislature, which focused on the posting of the Ten Commandments in public schools. A new one for me that is new to me this weekend, which I haven't paid attention to, is Senate Bill 11, which, to my understanding, and our guest today can certainly speak to it more than I can, what I believe I understand to be is that public school districts have permission to vote and allocate specific intentional time for prayer, and led by the employees of the district, which would be in order for students to participate, their parents would need to fill out a permission slip, and therefore the districts would coordinate who is opting in and who is opting out. And again, I want you just to hold that intention. This is new for me that I'm reviewing, and again, perhaps our guests can definitely speak more eloquently on it than I can at this point. Today, we are shifting from analysis to impact. This is the week where we ask how statewide debates and legislative decisions actually land in real places, in classrooms and staff meetings, school board agendas, and district budgets. We want to understand how policies shape teacher morale, student belonging, and the daily life of schools in districts like ours. Just as important, we are asking where influence is real, where it is limited, and how ordinary voices can engage faithfully without slipping into either despair or domination. To help us do that, we are grateful to welcome Vikki Goodwin. Representative Goodwin serves our district where we are located here, District 47, and is posted on committees that oversee not only finances, but regularly engage with her colleagues on public education. She brings longstanding experience working alongside educators, families, and local communities. We invited her last year as a special guest when we did a deep dive in exploring homelessness issues. And as a result of our work last year, we formed a homeless mission group that has already done a significant amount of work in addressing homelessness in our area. And today we've invited someone who can help us really do the same by honing in on these statewide issues on education and how policy moves, how it changes, and how sometimes policy stalls. Our hope today is that her perspective will help us see both the possibilities and the limits of civic engagement, and to clarify what thoughtful, grounded participation can look like for people of faith who care deeply about public education. Please help me welcome District 47 Representative Vikki Goodwin. I'm going to give the podium over to her. Before I do, we're not going to go individually, but if you have been involved in public education, would you please raise your hand? There's the crew.
All right.
Having kids in public.
Okay, well, I meant like as a teacher or a leader, a facilitator. Thank you. So what we're going to do, I'm going to invite you to just share whatever things you want, and then I've got some questions, and we want to take time to open it up, please.
All right. Well, thank you. So good to be with you here today. I am State Representative Vikki Goodwin. I ran for the first time in 2018. Never thought I would run for public office, but I just got really frustrated with the funding of our public schools. And actually, it comes also from my mom. When I was growing up, she was very involved in public schools. I grew up in Dallas. She was on the Dallas School Board in the late 80s, early 90s, and talked about how her frustration that it wasn't the school board that decided how much money they had to spend on teachers and teacher pay, but it was this Texas legislature. So that is why I ran for the legislature. My first session, there was realization that there were a number of seats, 12 seats flipped as a result of us being on the campaign trail talking about public education funding. Specifically, that was one of the things that I spoke about continuously on the campaign trail. And so that session, we actually did increase school funding by $6.5 billion above what we had spent the prior year. But then since then, we have not increased it until 2025. So we went from 2019 until 2025 without any increase and a lot of inflation. So at this point in time, our school districts, I think across the board, are dealing with deficit budgets, not enough money, having to increase class sizes. And really, this last session, I'm on appropriations this time. I used my seniority to get on the appropriations committee. And it was very frustrating to me to hear some of the things that the Texas Education Agency Commissioner said in those hearings. One of the things he said, so we already have a complicated school funding formula. Anyone understand Texas school funding formula? Like, there's a joke that there are 3 people who understand it and 2 are dead. So it's incredibly complicated. And this session, the legislature, along with the TEA commissioner, made it even more complicated.
Nice.
So we have this basic amount that we give for every student, and it's called the basic allotment. And to simplify things, because I have spent a lot of time trying to understand our school funding formula, you start with that $6,000. It had been $6,160. Now it's bumped up to $6,200, something or other. We bumped it $55, which is nothing. But that's our basic amount. And then you add on top of that some additional money for kids who have special needs, low income students, career, technology, education, transportation. There's all these other factors that you add on top. Well, this session we created a new bucket of money called the ABC, allotment for basic costs, separate from the basic allotment. But in talking to superintendents and school board members, they have to bend over backwards and do all this juggling to make the money work for their district. If you put it into the basic allotment, that gives them flexibility. They can use it how they need it. Because they put it in this ABC fund, there's all these rules about how that money can be used. Same thing with teacher pay raises. I don't know if anyone heard we gave teacher pay raises, but again, they put it into a specific bucket with a lot of rules about how it can be spent. Only on teachers, not on principals. And so in one of these conversations, the superintendent said, I have a principal who's now making less than a teacher in that school. And that's not ideal. So anyway, I'm on appropriations, not on public ed, but I've filed bills around public education. And of course, y'all know vouchers passed this last session. $1 billion initially, and it could escalate to who knows how much ultimately, because the governor has said that he wants it to be a universal system where any kid could access those dollars to go to private school, ultimately. It just opened up. That was obviously a huge conversation in this last session in 2025. And unfortunately, we get caught up in these issues that we don't all agree on. And it was really tough to get it passed. And the only reason it passed was because of millions of dollars of campaign funding that went to the governor, then went into campaigns. And that's what ultimately caused that bill to get passed. But it didn't allow us to have conversations about some of the really significant issues in our schools, one of which is testing. So we passed a bill in the second special session around the STAR test, saying we want to cut down how much time is spent on testing so that kids can do other things besides just being taught how to take this one test. So we went from 1 test a year to 3 tests a year. Very frustrating. And the debate on the House floor was the author of the bill at the front of the room and Representative Gina Hinojosa at the back saying, sir, your bill says that now we're going to spend more time on the test. I thought our goal was to spend less time on the test. And he is at the front of the room saying, no, we're going to spend less time on the test. And she says, in black and white, it says more time, and that's how our debates have gotten. Reality and what, I don't know, what planet am I on?
A distortion of reality.
Yeah, a distortion of reality. So it is a little bit frustrating working in the legislature, but y'all want to know how you can have an impact. And you want to know, do we have an impact? And absolutely. So I'll just give some examples. Every organization, PTA and Parents for Texas Public Schools and Pastors for Texas Children tend to have an advocacy day at the Capitol when they come to the Capitol en masse. And it's great because we can see, look at all for some reason, red is for public education. You see all the red shirts up in the gallery and it's like, oh, all of our public education supporters are here today. That's great, but it's not as impactful as just getting into the members' offices and talking directly to the legislators or coming to the committee hearings. Because oftentimes the advocacy day is once it has reached the House floor or later in session. And again, it's great to see that, but the real impact is when you're telling your personal stories in the hearing room. Another example, and I'm sorry, I'm going to have to get off of education for just a moment, but there were over 600 people who came to the Capitol this session on one issue. And ultimately, the lieutenant governor had his idea of what he wanted. and he got it passed despite all those people coming into the Capitol, but then the governor vetoed that bill. Anyone know what I'm talking about?
CBD thing?
Yeah, THC.
Yeah.
So that's an example in my mind of where people had a big impact, but it took a lot of people because the 600 people who came to the Capitol, that was significant. But what changed the governor's mind, what caused him to veto that bill was reams and reams of signatures that were brought to the Capitol by business owners who were saying, we had veterans who testified against because they prefer using that product to opioids. We had business owners saying, you legalized hemp in 2019. We created businesses around that. You're going to wipe out a $5 billion industry. And then just some Republican ladies that like their, Chewy's gummies or whatever. I don't know what they are. But my point being that it was a lot of pressure from a lot of different groups coalescing. So working on coalition building is incredibly important because your voice is louder when you are working together. And so I mentioned there's PTAs, there's Pastors for Public Education, there's grandparents or Pastors for Texas Children and Grandparents for Public Education. There's a lot of groups out there that are advocating for public education. The main thing being, if we, first of all, we just need to fund our public schools appropriately. So some of the things that are happening because we're not are some school districts going to 4-day school weeks. Some school districts, well, Denton in particular, having to file 67 waivers. What that means is they have 67 classrooms that have more than the legal allowed number of students in the classroom. There's probably more than that, but districts all across the state are experiencing challenges with their budgets. And so the number one thing is we've got to increase funding. And so I think oftentimes the other issues get kind of buried or silenced because that one issue is so critical.
Can you talk about on funding, and especially with your expertise, some of the promises or things that we hear, and I'm going to come at it from two angles. One is the Texas State Lotto. We'll talk about that because that's supposed to be public ed money. And then two, there's hundreds or there's billions of dollars that is in surplus or, the mythical billions that is being used and accessed for other things, but cannot be like the wall on the southern border. You don't have to debate that. But that money gets appropriated there and still reductions or bills passing that cause districts to have to spend more money hurting them. Can you talk about those?
Yes, so much that I could say. Well, first of all, the state is underspending its revenue by $4 billion. So we're a very conservative state. We have 3 different limitations or 3 rules that our budget has to follow. And the most conservative of those rules, we still underspent what we could have spent by $4 billion. Now, according to the other 2 rules, 10 billion and 15 billion. So depending on which you look at. That's money that we could have spent on public education, but instead we just chose not to spend it on anything. Also,
It's collected money?
well, it's a budget, so it's expected revenue.
Okay, gotcha.
But again, we can choose to expend all of that if we chose to. The rainy day fund or the economic stabilization fund is going to hit its max in a month or 2 is what the comptroller had estimated. So I forget if it's $28-30 billion. That could be used for one-time spending. That's what we tend to spend it. And we do spend it, but very little of it. Texas is really good at creating these funds and then making it really impossible to use those funds. And one example is the Flood Infrastructure Fund. Kerrville had written a grant proposal for a flood warning system. And the state said, okay, well, we'll give you 10% of what you need, and y'all have to come up with 90%. And they said, we don't have that much. So instead of being a good partner, the state makes it impossible. So that money sits in that fund. We have an opioid abatement fund. And the whole point behind that is to provide treatment, addiction treatment services and things like that. Well, instead of drawing that down, it actually grew last year. So we have more money in that fund. Like the state creates these funds for things and then we don't spend it. And then on public education, we do it based on attendance. And there've been some movement to change that to enrollment based. That is a little more reliable, so our school districts can budget a little bit better. Of course, they know we're going to have maybe 5% of absenteeism throughout the year, so they already take that into account. But then there are certain times where that, like right now, with students not showing up to school because they're maybe worried about showing up to school. So I think our school districts may be experiencing higher absenteeism this year. And that's going to be a real problem. When you are funding your schools based on attendance, that is a problem. So that's something that we could decide. And we've had Representative Gina Hinojosa filed the bill to change it to an enrollment-based funding. Now, I know a lot of people say, how are we going to catch up to inflation, for example? So it would have taken $10 billion additional dollars just to catch up to inflation where we were in 2019. Well, the legislature asked the federal government to reimburse us $10 billion. Anyone know what that was for? Operation Lone Star. So not the wall specifically, but Operation Lone Star and all the people that we have down at the border, thousands of members down at the border doing what? Absolutely nothing. Except helping their economy down there. The hotels are full, but not being used in a really effective way. So there's places in the budget we can move money. And then also you have to think about the fact when you're paying your teachers better, when you're paying people to build infrastructure, that money goes in their pockets and then they go out and they spend it on restaurants, on clothing, and then it comes back to us in terms of revenue. Sales tax is our largest revenue source. Now the lottery is a little bit problem. I mean, yes, it was set up to provide funding for our public schools, but I think the promise was made a little grander than it should have been. The expectation should have been set that this might provide 5% of our school funding or whatever it was, because we just aren't going to generate enough money through the lottery to entirely pay for our public schools. And also a portion of that goes to veterans programs. So nobody's going to want to take that away. And a lot of people don't really necessarily want, hey, everybody go out and gamble more so we can pay for our public schools. And we had this really big controversy with the lottery last year. I don't know if y'all heard, but one person set up shop and bought millions of tickets. They gamed the system. And the legislature found out about it through a media reporting, investigative report. And they said, oh, that shouldn't have happened. So we're going to disband the lottery commission. Well, somebody should have had better oversight to begin with. And who's going to oversee it now? But end result is the lottery is not going to ever entirely pay for public education. But, if we legalize marijuana, that might be a tax revenue like Colorado and other states have seen. That can be a controversial issue. But the thing is, when it's illegal, a lot of people end up in jail and prison over small amounts. And what good has that done us? And people are still going to find it. So that's out there. Casino gambling is something that has come to the legislature before. In my opinion, I think, why don't we let the people of Texas vote on these things, these really big changes, legalizing marijuana and casino gambling? Because I hear arguments that are very valid on both sides of the issue, and I'm not a gambler, but I know that other states around us have casinos that people go to. Why not have them here and allow us to have that revenue? But I don't have a clear vision of how the people of Texas feel. I think so let's put it up to a vote, whether through a legislative constitutional amendment or through a citizen-led ballot initiative. Anyone here think citizen-led ballot initiatives might be a good idea? In Texas, they're allowed in other states, but not in Texas. So I've filed that bill because I think it would be helpful to really know what the citizens want. And during the debate on vouchers, I talked to several Republicans about, okay, it looks like this bill is going to pass, but what if we have an amendment that puts it up to a vote to confirm, like the legislature says we're going to have vouchers, but we're not going to do it if the people of Texas don't agree. We had enough votes until Trump called the Republican caucus, but the Republicans that I spoke to individually on the floor said, we already had that vote. And I said, no, we didn't. They said in the primary, it was on the ballot. Well, on the Republican primary ballot, it did say whether or not vouchers was one of their platforms. And so they may have, in the very few people that vote in primaries and the even fewer people that vote in the Republican primaries, they may have had a say, but not the whole state. So anyway, I really went.
No,
all over the
that's
place on
wonderful.
that.
No, that's great. I think that's helpful. And what I hear you doing is helping us dispel some myths, especially about the lotto and gambling. I think what I'm struck by what you're sharing is while at the same time there's some strength in a conservative viewpoint to not have the sin revenue, if you want to call it that, the gambling, the pot, the lot, all, what they may call that, right? But at the same time, it's not met with the values of enhancing and enriching the lives of our children. And if those values were first, then we wouldn't have as many issues with regard to how we fund our public education. And so I think there's just some disconnect there in my mind. When it comes to public education, and from your view on the floor, where do you think that where it happens that there's a disconnect between the people on the floor of the state and the people who are serving in the school buildings?
So some of y'all are teachers or were teachers in here. How often did you follow the legislature and what our intent was?
We got time.
Right. I mean, that's not your job. So I would imagine that when you are faced with a new law like the 10 Commandments on the classroom wall, you might be going, what brought that about? Like, why? And when kids start asking questions about the 10 Commandments being on the classroom wall, a teacher might be, I don't know, I was just told I have to do that. So yes.
See, when you ask that question, teachers belong to, not every teacher perhaps, but teachers belong to organizations, NCAE, and they are about keeping you updated on what legislatures are doing.
Right.
Teachers know when there is a possibility of a raise because of the legislature's mental, I don't know the right word for it, but when it's more favorable that it might happen. So I do think teachers have an awareness. They don't know how to work within that always, but yeah, it's a political job to be a teacher because your salary is linked to the politics of your state.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, just the intention, like why are they so intent on the 10 Commandments being on the class? Like, what do they think the outcome will be? Because there is debate, and the debate included, what about kids who aren't Christian in the classroom? My chief of staff brought that up. She's Hindu, and her son sees it on the classroom wall and says, well, is my religion not as good as this religion? And so that comes up in the debate. And I just, if she were a teacher in the classroom and that were on the wall and a student had a question about it, well, that's not my religion, can't tell you about it, well, then why do you have to have it on the classroom wall? I just think what gets lost is perhaps the intention, and I don't know if even all the legislators know entirely what is the intention, other than certain people want their beliefs to be the belief. Yes.
I have several questions about the voucher system. Number one, where does the money come from? How much is each voucher? And doesn't that Well, do the private schools have a say in who attends and who doesn't attend, even if
Yes.
there is a voucher system?
Yeah.
And will the voucher system create attendance issues at the private schools and funding and, you know, all that stuff?
So the initial amount was $1 billion. 50 million of that went to a company. So not to the classroom, but to a company to oversee the process. $10,000 is going to be the standard amount that a student would get, but it could go up to 30,000 if they are special needs and they're autistic or something like that. If it's a private school, that is more expensive, or 2,000 if it's a homeschool situation. There are somebody said somewhere around 1,700 private schools in the state. Definitely not enough slots for all of the students that might want to go to private school. And so it remains to be seen. I think they got 30,000 applications on the first day. So and there's a lot of challenges with it, to be honest, because the families won't know if they get a voucher until later in the process. Then the private schools have their application process and their application fee and deposit. So these families have to pay a fee and a deposit before they know if they're going to get the voucher money. And so if they're low income, that might be a barrier. If they're low income, a barrier might be there's not a private school nearby. So the transportation might become a barrier. So there's while the legislature says the intention is to help our low income or special needs students, there's a lot of barriers to that actually happening.
I want to add on to that with regard to the vouchers and the accessibility. I think, can you speak to some of the challenges? I think I heard Harold ask this about what a private school has to provide or doesn't have to provide, different from a public school.
So public schools, the laws that they have to follow is like 8 reams of paper big. Private schools have about 8 pages of law that they have to follow, and that's it. So that they don't have to accept students if they have special needs. They can accept a student and then say you're not really a good fit, behavior issue. So I'm sorry, you have to go back to your public school. And that happens a lot. I've heard a lot of anecdotal stories about kids that started in private school and it just wasn't for them for whatever reason, or the school said it wasn't for them. And so the student came back to public school and then had to catch up. The private schools, obviously, they can be religious, but we have found that the state is now saying, oh, but we don't want these vouchers to go to Muslim schools. Or anything other than Christian. So
Is that in the bill?
no, but the Attorney General is working on that.
Wasn't that the point of the vouchers?
Probably not spoken out loud, but yes. So that there's one company that accredits school. Now there were some guardrails put in. Schools have to be accredited. They have to be in existence for 2 years before they can be accepted into the voucher program. But apparently this one company that accredits schools has accredited the Muslim schools. None of their schools with that come under their accreditation have been accepted into the program, and they aren't all Muslim schools. So that there's some unintended consequences.
Thank you.
I have a quick question on attendance. So if our public schools and our superintendents are going through and looking at, I have 1,000 kids enrolled at this high school, but only 950 show up on a regular day, so I only get paid for 950 for attendance. Do private schools have a similar attendance or enrollment information that they have to share with the state, especially if they're going to be receiving vouchers?
No, because it's per child. So the $10,000 that the child gets just goes to pay for
Wherever they go.
Yeah, and the attendance isn't a relevant issue in that situation.
How about the testing? Sorry, are the private schools subject to the laws of the testing that?
So the private schools don't have to test the student, but the students do have to be tested. So they have to take some sort of not a STAR test, but what do you call them?
Entrance exam.
Not an entrance, norm referenced test. So that it is showing that they are getting what kids across the US are supposed to be learning, type of thing.
It's that test.
But it's upon the family to make sure the student gets tested, not the school.
Let me pause for just a second, and I know we got a lot of questions. This is great. I see Michelle. Who else? So I can put you in line. Michelle, and then John, and then Mary, and then Diane. Let's start there. Michelle.
It feels like, I'm hoping this is a myth, Abbott wants our public school system to fail. So I don't want to get you in trouble, but it just feels like he wants it to fail.
Yeah. It's like my
Feels like that.
team and I talk about this often. It's a 3-step thing. Step 1, you underfund it. Step 2, everybody complains because it's failing. And step 3, you privatize. And at the end of the day, what happens when you privatize? Somebody's making money.
Exactly.
And somebody donated to Abbott in the first place to get him to pass vouchers.
Absolutely.
And that somebody is tied to a company that actually does the processing for vouchers.
So my feeling is probably correct.
Yeah.
Wow.
John.
I'm not sure what the bill was, but it was related to punishments of kids and how they could be punished, and it was slated as to punish more minorities inequitably. Can you speak to that? Or do you remember the went through?
Well, we have had a lot of debate in the House about classroom discipline. So some teachers saying we don't have the tools that we need when we have a disciplinary problem. And there was an example of a student who I think threw a chair at a teacher and she lost her eye. And so that has been a continuous debate about how do you give teachers more ability to handle behavioral issues without causing what you said of the discipline falling more heavily on children of color. And so I don't think we have really resolved that, to the degree. I was surprised to learn, though, I filed a bill around making it more transparent, the disciplinary actions in a school, and showing if there is any disproportionate disciplinary actions based on race, taking data that the schools already have to provide to TEA, but then putting it back out available on a website in a readable format. Because we tried to find it on the TEA website and it's not in any format that anyone could ever really understand. So we said, just take the data that you've already got and put it in a format where people can look at their school and see what the disciplinary actions are. And we outlined the things. And as we were outlining the different types of discipline to be included on the report, they said corporal punishment. And I was like, well, we don't even have corporal punishment anymore in this state. Oh, we do. I didn't know that. So it's allowed, but the school district gets to make the choice whether they can spank the kids or not. And so most of the urban districts don't allow it. A lot of the rural do.
So there's district choice on things like that. There's district choice on other issues. But when it suits the state lawmakers to take away district choice, and it suits their purposes, they'll take it away. That's interesting. And then Mary, then Diane.
So does the state voucher fund pay enough to cover the full cost of an education?
No, I mean, there may be those rare schools that are 10,000 for tuition, but that's very rare. Most of them are 20, 30,000 a year for tuition.
So does that mean that this is to encourage people who are already fairly well off to have a benefit that others don't have?
Yeah, well, and we brought that up in the debate, and so they do have 4 categories of students, and low income is the first 2 buckets. The student has to be from a low income family and special needs, but then the other 2 buckets are any income level at the bottom bucket, and there's a certain percentage that have to fall within each of the buckets. So, but who is going to be calculating that and looking at that?
If I remember from the debates on the floor on that issue, one of the proposals was to have a cap at if you make X number, say, I don't know if it was 400,000, 500,000, I don't remember what it was, somewhere in that range, then you would be no longer eligible for the discount, the state discount, the vouchers,
Right.
To discount your private education, and that I remember failed. That did not get passed.
Right. Yes, that one, and also the idea that members ourselves could benefit from this program. And so already in the news, one of the representatives has signed his 3 kids up for vouchers.
Yeah, I remember that. That was also one of the amendments, was that state legislators would not be eligible for the vouchers because there'd be a conflict of interest, and
Yeah.
and
In the end,
so goes the way.
right.
Diane, Sarah, did I see your hand up? No. Anybody else want to ask questions? All right, I'm coming around. All
I'm
right.
gonna go on a kind of a different.
Wait, not you yet. It's
Jackie
Diane.
Roberts, okay.
Yeah, it's Diane next.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for your years of supporting public education.
You're welcome.
I've been a public educator for 36 years. I actually have kind of a double question. One is exactly what are they doing? How are they using the 10 Commandments in the classroom? Because I haven't actually heard how they're being used. And then just the other day, I was reading about Abbott supporting something called Club America Clubs, that he's wanting to be implemented in our school.
The turning point.
That's turning.
Yeah, like they're trying, if you can address exactly what that is all about and what it's.
Okay, so the 10 Commandments on the classroom wall, I don't know. I mean, I'm curious to ask a teacher. So when I was in the debate, my question to the author of the bill was, what about in the Spanish classroom? Or do they have to put the 10 Commandments in English on the Spanish classroom wall, or the dance classroom?
Yeah.
Or the art, or whatever, and she said, yes, on every classroom wall. So,
My English, I assume.
Yeah.
In that one particular.
My sister-in-law teaches a STEM class. It's forensic science. So again, like, I don't know. So I'm very curious, I think it's going to be like those signs near bridges that say, may ice when cold.
You're just kind of there.
You just ignore them because they're there, and who knows why they put, I imagine students might see it, might comment on it, and then the next day they forget that it's there. Is my guess. And then your second part of the question.
Turning point.
Turning point.
Club America clubs for kids.
Yeah,
is
so
that your
Lieutenant Governor gave $1 million to implement bringing that to all the high schools. I don't know a lot about Turning Point, but I know it's a very conservative organization our governor and lieutenant governor keep talking about kids being indoctrinated on school campuses. In my mind, a group like that is closer to indoctrination than what we see with the kids who just walked out in protest, and which the governor is coming out against after Austin ISD, even though a lot of school districts had students who walked out in protest. And even though that's their First Amendment right, and even though there's been a Supreme Court case that says it's their right to protest. So I don't know, other than the lieutenant governor and governor are going to just keep pushing their agenda of we know better than you. Our morals should be your morals. And we just have to keep pushing back and saying,
We're
you know,
doing an alternative halftime show today with Kid Rock.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if you don't wanna watch Bad Money.
Yes.
And how do you watch the alternative on the computer?
You gotta
I
be
guess?
on the inside, I guess.
I'm certainly not gonna take to do that.
Oh,
So hang on, Diane. Kathy, you're up, and
Yeah,
then
no, this-
Kitty,
I-
you're
I-
next, and Michelle.
how did we push back?
Oh, Diane, hang on a second.
Oh,
Kathy's up.
Okay, so I'm gonna be a little tangential to the subject here, which is essentially following Willie Sutton's law and where the money goes, you know. But I have I'm gonna say point blank, when I was a freshman in medical school, I was enormously upset by the fact that most of the people in my class wanted to know the right answer and didn't think about, all right, am I asking the right question? All right. And so I'm concerned about the testing issues and how you develop critical thinking that is age appropriate and test for it so that that's what the outcome is that we're looking for is kids graduating from high school who can evaluate and make judgments in a reasonable, rational, logical fashion, whether you agree with it or not. Because let's face it, most of them don't know how to do that. Most of the public operates at a 6th grade level. They can't read at a college level. And so how do you bring people up from what's called concrete operation into rational thinking and mature judgment? And so I'm wondering if there's any to test the tester about what they're testing for.
right, yeah. I told this woman that was complaining to me about the STAR test a couple of years ago, I said, bring pieces of the test to me to distribute to all the legislators. I will put them on their desks on the House floor and let them see what's in the test, because I think it would be very interesting to see what their thoughts were when they actually read some of the tests, because I hear all the time it's not age appropriate, or it's just not the appropriate questions. And so I think there's been this big push to get away from the STAR test and standardized testing, but no matter how much we seem to be pushing to get away from it, we haven't. And so I think continuing to try to address it, and it's because of money. The testing company makes a lot of money, and there's this perverse incentive, you know, they make campaign contributions, and then the outcome is that we continue with this testing. I think we should look at are the results of all of this testing making our kids better equipped to handle college and what do we say, career, college, military ready? You know, are we successful in that because that's our goal or not? And if not, then we need to change what we're doing. We need to really substantially reduce or change what we're doing as far as STAR testing goes.
Kitty.
My question was on the State Bill 10. I have a great nephew that is teaching 5th grade. He claims to be atheist and refuses to put the bill in his classroom.
Well, there's a lawsuit against the 10 Commandments bill, and there were, I don't know, 13 or 17 school districts that were included in the lawsuit. So the judge has said you don't have to put the 10 Commandments up. Other districts, it varies around the state. So I spoke to one superintendent who said, oh, we just went ahead and put it up because they didn't want to cause waves. You know, I think, I don't know what the situation is in your great nephew's school, but I mean, I think he should have the right to not put it on his wall. But then again, what would the repercussions be? So he kind of has to weigh the pros and cons of that.
So for what I've learned on that is two things. One, absolutely, he or any teacher, and y'all know my wife's a teacher across the street, would face disciplinary action by the district itself. So it's not that there's at this time, that there's not a a state auditor who's going around to every classroom yet. So yes, that person, one, could face repercussions by the district themselves. Two, this has been a path for citizen reporting. So one of the parents of that child can report that teacher either to the district or to the state, at which time an auditor can then come. What was just appointed on, what's today, Sunday, Friday, was the terminology eludes me because it just happened on Friday, is that there is a person who is been tasked with investigating school districts with regard to the students who have walked out in protest and how they might bring punishment upon the districts. And I can't remember the title that they're calling this individual.
Inspector General or something like that.
Something to that effect. And so that is something I think to pay close attention to. We're going to be moving towards closing. Michelle, you
Actually, that was my question, is like, when Abbott does something like that, does the legislature have any say in the power that person has? No.
No,
What knows this?
unfortunately, a lot of times we find ourselves in this quandary. What do we do as legislators? And
Yeah.
so we end up writing a letter. All of the members that agree will sign the letter and we send it and nothing happens.
Okay.
But, you know, we don't have a lot of power when we're not in session.
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you, Vikki. I appreciate everybody, please. Because you did bring it up, I do want to talk about the testing just for a second. So one test, let's say it costs how much? Thank you. I know you do.
Get on the road.
Go, please. Thank you. Well, I'm going to throw fake numbers out here, okay?
Million, call it 50
No.
million.
For one district, okay?
Oh, for one district.
So one district, they had to have an administrator who is the overseer of that test, right? For the district. Now, that test goes out to all the teachers, the proctors, you got to follow the rules. That information goes to the company who's overseeing and scoring this, that, and the other. But all of the administration of that one test happens at the district, whose one person is tasked with that to farm it out, or to farm it out to the teachers. The results go here. The company sends the results back here. There is a slew of reports that have to be written about it. And then it gets sent to the state so that they're reporting appropriately. The amount of time, that's a clock, and the amount of money for the one test, let's just call it the STAR test, is significant. There are about months of administration for this one test and thousands of dollars for a district administrator to administer that. That does not include, that's the STAR test. What that doesn't include is the TSI test, which is it's Texas Student Inventory or prepare. It's basically, this is a preparedness test that the students must take. Barron took it. My son didn't take it because he didn't want to accept the privacy policy. And so, no, not nice. And so right now he's in a hindrance because he's not allowed to enroll in any public higher education because he didn't take it in the fall. And what he wants to do is take Austin Community College this coming summer, but he's not eligible to because he didn't take this. But the administration, knucklehead, the administration of this test is still under this person, and all of this work is also here as well. Okay. Now we're going to add in 2 additional cycles of exams. Tripling.
Yeah.
Doesn't include anything related to the district's administration of SAT exams or the ACT exams or the AP exams or the International Baccalaureate exams that this person does. So by the addition of this, you necessarily have to have this one person can't do it all. You have to hire other people to do it. So these policies that come down from the legislature that are pushed down to the districts mandating these things is why we see such a massive ballooning of finances at the district level. So then when we, Jay and Joe Pugh citizen, are looking at school budgets, we say, why is it so administrative heavy? This doesn't make any sense. Cut those administrators. Well, they can, but this work doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Right.
The districts are still mandated to do this work. It doesn't go away. This one person for Round Rock ISD, I met her in December and she was telling me about all of this. She's almost a one-person show. She does all of the exams and other items that are not related to the exams, other responsibilities that other admin staff used to do, but have been cut. So that work has fallen on top of her. I would never want to apply for her job. She's really, really good at it. She's seasoned. She's been there a long time. She knows what she's doing, but she's had to take on other departmental duties that are outside of just this one area alone. And
I think Westwood took those other two tests because Barron said they were cake. He said they were no challenge.
We'll talk to my son. When he could not register for U.S. history at Austin Community College last week or 2 weeks ago, and I told him, son, it's because you wouldn't accept the privacy policy. He goes, oh.
I know, but the fact that your son read the privacy policy is a one up to my son.
Anyway.
It's like, I just want to get through.
Consequences.
I just want to get through.
It's a learning moment, and I just love that Dad was right.
These days.
Enjoy that moment.
Today, we see more clearly what public education is not shaped by headlines alone. It is shaped by process, pressure, and participation. Faithful engagement does not mean control. It does not mean silence. It means showing up with humility, honesty, and care for people most affected. And as we heard from Representative Goodwin, it is on advocacy days, but it really is also on hearing days, on the days in which they're having the committee hearings. Next week, we're going to pause our class so that we may all attend our annual mission fair. And then when we return on the 22nd, we'll be turning toward a deeper theological discernment and ask how we tell the difference between gospel and the idols that distort it. We have a 2-week visit from a professor, a retired pastor and now current professor at Austin Seminary, who's written a book on the theology at the intersection of theology and public education. And I meet with him tomorrow or Tuesday or something, and we'll be prepping for that. I had mentioned to you a few weeks ago that I had reached out to this academic professor, someone in the state of Texas who's well known. I never got a response back from him. And I just got one yesterday. And he said, oh my God, I didn't have access to this email for 3 months. And yes, I want to come. Is there a date that can work? I might have to adjust our schedule because he is interested in coming. And he's renowned in the state for this topic. And I want to make sure we can create space for him. I'll also got the superintendent for Round Rock ISD, who is on our schedule. Their office reached out. They cannot find a board of trustee person to come with them. And they really want y'all to hear from the board of trustee in addition to the superintendent. So they've asked if I can rearrange the schedule. I'm going to see what I can do. And that's just a little bit of a heads up. Okay. Any questions for me before we part? If you haven't, please, again, as I said from the very beginning, consider attending a school board meeting, either for Round Rock ISD or for Leander ISD. The bill that I talked about, Senate Bill 11, I will do my research on it tomorrow and try to send y'all information. And this is the bill that the districts will have to vote on about whether or not the districts are going to craft time daily to lead school prayer. And the reason why I feel like there's an urgency is the deadline on that vote is March 1st. So that's by the end of this month. I don't know whether or not Leander or Round Rock have already voted on that, but if they have not, I will find out. I will let you know. And it'd be important then, if you feel like you have a voice and you want to say something on it, to show up at that school board meeting to do so. So I will do my best to find that out before I email you before the middle of this week. Okay. All right. Somebody lead us in that closing prayer.
We do it together.
We do it together. Lead us, Mercy. Loving God, we leave this place changed by what we have learned. Give us courage to act with wisdom to speak. And go with us now. As your schedule allows, please take time on that weekly reflection survey. That is helpful, not only engaging how we're to see how we're engaged in the materials, but for someone like Representative Goodwin, I was able to send her the comments from y'all, so she had a briefing already on things that we've covered and feedback that y'all had sent. This is also helpful information for our future speakers as well. Thank you. Go in peace.
Is that your little bag? Star?